Good morning and welcome to Funky Rainbow's Book Bazaar. 2 weeks of a break thanks to this terrible influenza flu that's doing the rounds all across the country. Just too many of us came down with it at the office, and yeah, we just read some books across that period essentially, but delighted to be presenting a bazaar, and a bazaar on a very, very popular theme. I mean, we often not, I mean, almost all, buyers who come to our office, children, parents, teachers, librarians, amongst the books that they see, they're always, partial to folk tales, fables, myths, legends. I mean, it's remarkable, even if we sort of try to wear them away from these books, and there's really no reason why we should be wearing them away from these books. They just gravitate towards picking one or two collections at least, and I always reckon it's the familiarity of the content, the simplicity of it, that really makes folk tales and fables very, very popular with readers of all ages. Muttama, what a pleasure to have you at the show joining us. Same case, influenza, and hence not being able to be at work. Just a whole bunch of us who came down with it across the last 15 days. But well, we were reading, and some collections of folk tales as well. I mean, which is why this bazaar, but also to celebrate World Folk Tales and Fables Week. I mean, it is World Folk Tales and Fables Week, starting the 19th of March, going on till the 25th, and we thought, what a good time to celebrate folk tales, fables, myths, and legends. Ritvika Roy, good morning. Such a pleasure to see you. Jyoti Narayan, also a pleasure. Storytellers, researchers. I'm sure that you do a lot of folktale reading. We have a clutch of books that we will recommend, but we have two wonderful guests with brand new books out. I mean, the books are under a month old, and fantastic collections both of fables, myths, folk tales, legends, and we are absolutely delighted that both Nitin Kushalappa and Rija Radhakrishnan will join us later in the show to talk about why these are so popular, why folk tales and fables and myths and legends are so popular with readers of all ages, and why they play such a big role in encouraging reading. I mean, it's a question that's, like I said, I mean, I began by saying that, we often recommend, when parents and teachers and librarians and children come in, to reading contemporary fiction. And while people pick the books of fiction or non-fiction, picture books, they'll always, add one or two collections of folk tales into their kitties, into their shopping bags. And I've always wondered, why they are so popular. Of course, Ritvika has an answer. She says nothing like folk tales and fairy tales to keep the blues away. Yeah, I think it's just the sheer simplicity, the familiarity of the stories that make them eternally appealing to readers of all ages, and also like such a great way to travel into another tradition, into another culture, into another state, into another into another life experience, really, because they are situated very firmly from, let's say, the state that they come from, or the tradition that they come from, or the culture that they come from. And there's this mix, a bit of magic, a bit of morality. I think it suits the Indian palate very well, perhaps, to be reading lots of folk tales and our ancient folklores. I mean, we've grown up hearing a lot of these stories, right? I mean, they're all oral tales, and I think Margaret MacDonald Reed said they are passed on from person to person, and A.K. Ramanujan, who said that in India, a good story or a good folk tale is just a grandparent away. So we've got some nice folk tales that we want to recommend, mostly newer books. I hope we've got some folk tales, we've got some fables, and I'm most excited about the two books and the authors that we're going to be in conversation with later in later in the show, because both of them have excellent new collections of books, of folk tales, myths and legends, and with very interesting slants. So, a little bit more in the course of the show, but I'll get started with my recommendations. And Ritvika is saying, oh, hope you get better soonest. Yes, if I start coughing in the middle of the show, I think I'll just abandon it and start reading another book. That's about it, really. Nothing like a couple of books to keep the blues away, really. So, let's get started with my first recommendation. And I've got to say that in the course of these recommendations, if you feel we are terribly partial to the Northeast, you've got to know that all of us at Funky Rainbow just love the Northeast. I mean, we have had the happy opportunity, a couple of years ago to travel to the Northeast with a huge collection of books, thanks to author Vijay Lakshmi Nagaraj, who helped set up, sessions and book readings, in Meghalaya, in Assam, and there's just so much beauty in that region, that we have always tried to bring in more and more collections of stories from the Northeast. Ritvika says, I've been doing some work on folk tales and fairy tales in the South Asian diaspora with Roshni Choksi and Sayantani Das Gupta's works, and they're such important aspect of keeping alive and passing on cultural traditions and stories among immigrant communities. They are like anchors to the homeland, rooting these communities. Actually, that just works so well even in India, even if we are not immigrants. I mean, we have such a diverse country, and I truly believe that folk tales by their very nature celebrate diversity in such splendid ways, really, right? And to keep yourself rooted just to even your own country. I mean, we know so little when you travel to these places and you see them with eyes, you feel so little, that folk stories with their elements, cultural elements, and with the continuity of some tradition, I mean, like, sort of celebrating certain traditions and customs. It is absolutely such a great way to understand the diverse nature of the world. So, my first recommendation for you is a fairly new book called Joku and the Big Scare. This is published by Tulika, and it's just a lovely book, a lovely story, written by Priyadarshini Gogoi and illustrated by Debasmita Das Gupta, about a Jokini. A Jokini is a demon in Assamese folklore, and this demon Joku, she wants to be the biggest, scariest, and like the blurb says, the championest jokini in the bamboo grove. Now, what does she do? She sits down in different parts of the grove, and every morning, I just love the pictures, like, she sharpens her teeth, she sharpens her nails, and there's just something so I mean, a little bit scary, but lots to laugh about, really, when you see jokini, Jokini wanting to scare everybody, right from a small baby to the biggest bully. And look at that, she goes ee and kai and ulu 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 ulu. It's just such a delightful book, and this is one of my favorite spreads in the book, because what she wants to do is scare a little baby and even scare the dhoti of the champion wrestler of the bamboo grove. So that's exactly what Jokini wants to do, till she meets young Joku. There is a little girl, and she meets young Joku, who refuses to get scared. What happens next? What happens, when Joku absolutely doesn't kind of succumb to any of Jokini's scary tactics. It's a fantastic folk tale from, from Assam, and I think children of all ages will, and it's got the happiest, sweetest, loveliest ending ever, which I'm not giving away, but you certainly have to read Priyadarshini Gogoi's Joku and the Big Scare to understand. I mean, to read a wildly funny story, but also to get a sense of Assam and what it is like to be transported via a story to another part of the country. The My next recommendation, and I said I'm sorry, this bias about the Northeast is absolutely going to show in this bazaar, in this show. There is How the Earth Was Made, brand new book. It came into our shelves just 2 days ago, I think, or maybe 3 days ago, published by Katha. It comes to us all the way from Manipur. Look at this gorgeously illustrated picture book. And it's a creation story, and my god, the northeastern creation stories are just simply fascinating in the way that they weave like a web around you on how the earth got created. So this one is a Meitei creation story, which comes to us from Manipur, that jeweled land, and it tells the story of Guru Siddhaba and Siddhabi, who were created first. I mean, there is the great Guru, yes, the great Guru Siddhaba, when the story begins. And what does he do? He sets out to create the earth. And, along with that, day and night, rivers and valleys, the sun and moon, and the first human beings, sort of who weave a web of life on earth. The book is just beautifully illustrated. So you can see Guru Siddhaba, the great Guru Siddhaba, who creates Siddhaba and Siddhabi, the two first, human beings, and also creates a four-legged creature to assist them to weave a web of life on earth. And what is that creature? It is none other than a spider. I thought it was just so beautiful that a spider was the creature who assisted Siddhaba and Siddhabi to create the earth. It's a beautiful story that comes to us all the way from Manipur. It's really beautifully illustrated. I mean, I'm tempted to show you many pages of the book, just because how stunning the pictures are, really. And it's a great creation story in the finest tradition of these northeastern tales, full of fantasy, and full of things that children will love. Like, when the spider weaves a web, and we all know spiders are such a big popular part of folklore. Anansi, we've all grown up reading stories of Anansi the spider. So when the web of life is getting woven, the different things that come into creating aspects of the earth, believe me, one of them absolutely had me chuckling. I think the kids will absolutely love it as well. There's beautiful things that come together to create life on earth, but there's also snotty sort of things, like, right, which I think the children will absolutely love. And it's a wonderful creation myth. Jyoti Narayan, you're absolutely right, the illustrations are just utterly stunning. These are picture books. You can read them out to your young readers. Joku and the Big Scare, nothing scary really in those stories. So you can read them out, I would say, to children as young as 3 and 4 years. In fact, How the Earth Was Made, perhaps even younger, and ask them, in fact, if one of the things that I thought that we could easily do was to tell them that if they were Guru Siddhaba or Siddhabi, what kind of things would they weave into the web of life? I mean, such a lovely way to get children to participate in the story as well. My next recommendation this morning, one of the most beautiful books in Funky Rainbow's collection. Tara just takes your breath away with the kind of handmade books that they create. And this one, not a very new one, but Sun and Moon. My God, I mean, again, stunningly illustrated, absolutely handmade, handcrafted books. In fact, there's a number on the book that says this is book 614 of 2000 copies that have gotten printed. You can see, each of the books is marked. The numbers are absolutely marked, essentially, which means what you're holding is a precious, wonderful, special edition book. There are only limited number of copies of this book. Now, these are folk tales from various tribal artists, and so they are more, they are beautifully visual, with just simple lines, which contain a whole world of stories within. In fact, it begins with a beautiful song, which I'm going to read out: Song of the Sun and the Moon. When clouds surround the ringed moon, we know rain's not far away. When there's an eclipse of the sun, we mark good and bad that day. When fiery lightning strikes the earth, we know a harvest will come our way. My gosh, what a harvest of stories in this book. The artists who've created them, like I said, very, very little text. You can see this gorgeous spread of the sun and the moon, and this illustration done by artist Ram Singh Urveti. This folk tale is about how the sun is life and the moon is time. And it's also interpreted as, when the why is it that the sun is scorching hot and the moon is just beautifully cool and serene. I mean, it's just lovely the way, with very, very simple lines. It's not one story. In fact, every spread, is of course taking this story forward. And again, I'm going to show you a picture of the sun and the moon, but it also has so many stories contained right within. And of course, rightfully, in the manner of most folk tales, so multi-layered, so open to interpretation with every telling. Jyoti, you're a storyteller, and I'm sure you know that you can interpret these stories in such beautiful ways when you're narrating to different kinds of audiences. Muttama is saying that this is a fabulous gift, not just for kids, but for all the adults in your life as well. So much appreciation one gets when one gives this book as a gift to readers of all ages. I mean, the artists who have contributed, there's Bhajju Sham, the wonderful, wonderful artist whose London Jungle Book is such a treasure. There is Dulari Devi, there's Durga Bai, there's Ram Singh Urveti, there's Subhash Vyam. You will be familiar with many of these names if you have, if you have picked up Tara's books. And the folk tales are all centric around the sun and the moon. And you can see there's this beautiful die cut on the cover, because you can see that when you lift the die cut, it's the sun and it's the moon, right? You can see that it's half of the sun and the moon, really. It's a universal theme in tribal folk tales, and this one by Tara, absolutely worth it. I know these books are a little bit pricey, but absolutely a keepsake of every kind. I mean, if you want to gift something to if you want to give something to a child, we'd say consider the book. Want to gift something for somebody's wedding, just gift these books. They are just utterly delightful ones, handmade books, so precious and so priceless. Jyoti is saying it's a treasure trove of a book, prompting so many dimensions, and the illustrations. And yes, it's absolutely lovely to see how each artist has interpreted stories, folk stories of the sun and the moon. A wonderful, wonderful book from Tara, meant for all ages. 1300, it's priced at 1300 rupees, but well worth every pie that you pay. My next recommendation, is a fable. I thought, it would be nice to bring in a couple of fables, into our collection. We haven't done too much mythology because a lot of readers are very, very familiar with mythologies. We do have one or two books, in our collection, but later in the show, when our guests join us, there's a lot of stories from ancient myths in both those collections. So, in my own list of recommendations, just a smattering of books on mythologies, but fables are. They are just timeless, right? I mean, when you read fables, and fables sort of, I just feel they have a timeless quality about them, simply because you could pick up the book when you were 6 or 8 or 10 years and read them. You could read them when fables when you're 20. You could read them when you're 50. They just reveal different meanings to you. And fables of all times, like, let's say, Little Prince. I mean, you may have gotten just a very basic logical story out of that book when you first read it as a child, maybe. But maybe you had understood many more nuances. But as you grow older and as you read, so many layers of meaning that can be uncovered from fables. And I think we have one or two in our list of recommendations today. This is a fairly new one. It's called The Gift of Giving, published by Karadi Tales, written by Gauri Ram Narayan, and illustrated by Atulya Pillai. It is, they don't say it is a fable, but on reading of the book, right, you are almost certain it is a fable for our times. So the protagonist of the story, Tian, he is a most generous man, and he's always working his magic to make our impoverished cities better in different ways. So he lives on a highland, and we're referring to the cities in the lowland, and you can just see the layers that exist within even just classifying areas as highlands and lowlands. I mean, several meanings that can be brought up, I mean, that can be interpreted from such a description. So he lives on the highland, and he's always weaving the magic of generosity in our impoverished, apathetic cities, really, right? And gosh, don't we know how impoverished we are in multiple ways in our cities. Now what happens? People always take his offerings. I mean, they are glad to be helped by Tian. If somebody is struggling or suffering, he waves his magic, I mean, he casts his magic spell and sets this right. But one time, and he has a lot of birds for friends, actually. So you can see, even as the story opens, he has a lot of birds who are his messengers and friends. And one time, they come back to tell him that the people in these cities, they just keep, in the lowlands, they just keep taking and taking and never giving anything in return. And Tian can't believe that. So he actually sets off on a journey, on a swan. And I'm sure each of these animals, they're imbued with certain meanings, like, right, I mean, the swan that can separate pearls from the water. Really, I mean, these were thoughts that sort of came to my mind. Now he goes with the swan into the lowlands, and what happens? Does Tian continue to give? Does he get back in return? Tian, of course, is a most generous man, and you can see, he helps various people even when he makes this visit to the lowlands. But when he has nothing left to give, what happens? What happens? And is this just a story of gloom and doom, or does Tian, is he able to inspire positive change? I mean, I think it's a fable for our times, definitely. We all know, how easy it is to just keep taking and fulfilling just your own needs and requirements? When do we start thinking about giving back? I mean, it's a beautiful picture book. Gauri Ramnarayan, very well known music critic, based in Madras. So, The Gift of Giving, which I think, they don't really say it's a fable, but the way it's written, the way it's constructed, the layers that come out of the story, I certainly think it's a fable for our times. I would say 6+ year olds, and it's the gift of giving, so you can be sure that there's positive change at the end of the story. This one priced at 250 rupees, published by Karadi. I would like some of you who are watching, and our friends on Instagram as well who are watching, please put down names of some fables or folk tales, myths and legends that you have enjoyed reading, collections. I mean, when you share your thoughts with us, we're always cross checking to see whether we have these books in our collection. When they come recommended by readers like you, we always like to do our best to include these books, the ones that our own readers recommend, into the collection. So if you have favorite folk tales, if you have favorite fables, please just put them down, in the chat. We'll look at it once the show is done and try to bring these books into our collection. And I'm sure each one of you has a favorite fairy tale and a favorite folk tale and a fable that you remember from your childhood, or you remember someone telling you, in your younger days, and perhaps even now. I mean, we all listen to so many storytellers these days, and many of the stories that they tell are certainly folk tales and fables. My next set of recommendations are these two books of mythology that I have put into this selection, both on same themes but meant for different ages. There's Vahana by Devdutt Patnaik, which is gods and their favorite animals. And I know Vahanas are infinitely engrossing. I mean, to know why, Shiva has a Nandi, to know why Vishnu has Garuda, to know why these animals become the gods' mounts. Right? I mean, there are some fantastic stories in the book, and Devdutt, of course, focusing on Hindu mythology. So he begins saying, within infinite myths lies an eternal truth. Who sees it all? Varuna has 1,000 eyes, Indra 100, you and I only two. What a great start on the open ended nature of mythology, and it's what you see through your eyes that you interpret from these stories. Now, this particular one, which is also it's a read and a color kind of book, which means our youngest readers will certainly kind of enjoy it. You can see fairly large text and and black and white pictures and color pictures that that the children can color these. So this is a read and color books. So for him, the premise from mythology is that the gods needed to travel, and they had to travel long distances wherever their devotees called, for them. And they couldn't easily get to those places in very quickly. So they felt that they needed to be able to travel faster. As for the animals, they were grappling. I mean, there were different kinds of animals that exist in our ecosystem. There were snakes, there were birds, there were predators, there were preys. And so, in the book, he talks about how different animals eat other animals, and what kind of ecosystem there is. Now, because they were getting eaten, they all ran to Brahma and said, how can, why is the life cycle designed in such a way that one creature eats another, eats another, eats another? Can we not do anything to get out of the cycle? And he says, well, some special ones can get out of the cycle. My suggestion is, please befriend the gods, so you can be of use to them, and you can also save yourselves. And then goes on to talk about various creatures, and how these creatures became the vahanas of the gods. I mean, it's very interesting for young, for young people, for older people, as older people as well. When you go into some places of worship, why is it that there are animals, always, why are these vahanas usually the first ones that you encounter? What makes these particular animals the vahanas of the gods? Devdutt Patnaik has some answers in his book. And the other book, which is also Vahana, published by Mango, written by Mamta Naini, who writes so well, tales of divine animal mounts of the gods. And she has focused in this book on Nandi, Hamsa, Mushika, Airavata, Garuda, Parvani, Davon. I actually had to read the book to find out who Davon was. I mean, we do know who these, in fact, Airavata, I'm sure if I say Airavata, you know that some of you know it's a white elephant. Whose Vahana is Airavata? Whose Vahana is Davon? I'm not giving that one away. I had to read this book to find out whose Vahana Davon was. I was able to, Nandi, I had an idea. Hamsa also, I had an idea. Mushika, of course, the ever popular Ganesha, and his Mushika. But, Davon, Parvani, you will have to read. This one is for slightly older kids. I mean, there are images. I mean, there are illustrations, of course, but we'd say a little bit more text than the Devdutt Patnaik book. So we'd say this one would work for 7, 8+ year olds, and that one for slightly younger 5, 6 year olds. So two books on the Vahanas of the gods from Hindu mythology, both of them focusing entirely on Hindu mythology. I'm just going to keep a watch over the time to see how much time we have. Maybe I'll recommend, we have two guests joining us later in the show, so a little bit more time to talk to both of them about their wonderful collections of folk tales, fables, myths, and legends, both very different from each other. I see that we have about 10 minutes or so for a couple of more recommendations. So I will recommend maybe 3 or 4 more books before we try to connect with our guests of the day, and one of them joining us live right at our studio, and one of the guests joining us online from Mumbai. But my next recommendation, and Ruskin Bond, I mean, lots and lots of people love Ruskin Bond, love his writing, love the way he narrates his stories. And so I was quite tempted. I mean, he's very, very popular with our readers. Now, I was quite tempted not to include, a book, simply because there are so many others to sort of focus on. But the story of the Kashmiri, his book on the Kashmiri storyteller is a great collection of folk tales from the hills of Kashmir. And there's just a fantastic anecdote which so the sutradhar of the story is a person called Javed Khan. He lights up his angiti, which is that little stove to keep yourself warm in the hills in Landur, which is where Ruskin Bond is from. And he enthralls a bunch of children, who come every evening to listen to Javed Khan's stories. There is Kamal, there is Shashi, there's Anil, there's Madhu, and there's Vijay. And all of these characters, make an appearance in each of the stories. And Javed Khan lighting up that Angiti and narrating fantastic stories from the hills and dales of Kashmir, one of the most beautiful, areas of India. Now, the thing is, so apparently, when Ruskin Bond first submitted this manuscript, and I wanted to say, gosh, even the best of writers have to face rejections of all kinds, really, right? Apparently, a lot of publishers got back to him saying, we don't know why you have a Sutradhar. Why do you have a Javed Khan? I'm afraid we just can't publish the book because there is a Sutradhar and we're not sure it's working with a Sutradhar. I wonder what prompted those publishers to say no. And Ruskin Bond was just adamant that he would not take away Javed Khan from this collection of stories. In his mind, Javed Khan with his Angiti at Landur Bazaar was the most integral part of this collection of stories. And so he just put it away in his trunk or in his drawer or on his desk for many, many, many years. And then when he met Ravi Singh, then with Penguin, apparently he mentioned this manuscript to him, and Ravi Singh was, immediately read it and said that he would absolutely like to publish it, and that he sees exactly why Javed Khan is integral to these wonderful folk tales from Kashmir. I just love that story. And, Ruskin Bond says this in the introduction. The little children who make an appearance in the story, like I said, there's Kamal, Shashi, Anil, Madhu, and Vijay. When this book got published, little Vijay was not so little anymore. He was in his 50s. And Shashi, she was a grandmother by the time this collection of stories came out. I just thought that was such a charming anecdote to share, and so, well, at least 30 years must have gone past, between the time, or maybe even more, 40 years may have gone past from the time that he wrote these stories to when the book got published. And a beautifully illustrated collection of stories from one of India's most beautiful spaces, the misty, wonderful hills of Kashmir. So this is Ruskin Bond. We'd say this one would work for 8 plus, more text heavy, as you can see, published by Penguin, priced at 399 rupees. I have a collection of fables, another beautiful, collection of fables that has been one of my favorite books forever and ever and ever. Simply because of the two people who've contributed to making this book, Suniti Namjoshi and Nilima Sheikh. I mean, growing up, going to college, I was a huge fan of Suniti Namjoshi's feminist fables. I remember it was part of our literature course, and my mind was just blown by the way Suniti Namjoshi wrote those fiercely feminist fables, that was part of a collection that we had to study. And so many, many years later, it is just so lovely to see a collection of stories for young readers. We'd say, of course, this one too, 7 plus, 8 plus, of Suniti Namjoshi using, I mean, she's a fabulous par excellence, basically, to bring that writing alive for young children. And Nilima Sheikh, the artist Nilima Sheikh from the Baroda School of Art. I mean, we have grown up hearing her name, her husband's name, Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh, and of the stunning art that they would create. So to get a book that combined these two, Suniti Namjoshi and Nilima Sheikh, this is Blue and Other Stories, which I think, again, contains many, many stories that are fables for our time. You can see these beautiful illustrations. I mean, it's a timeless book. I really can't even, specify an age for it. The kind of nuance that Suniti Namjoshi brings to her writing, it's just unbelievable. And Nilima Sheikh's paintings, which have adorned galleries all over the world, to have it in a children's book is just such a delight. I can only tell you that it begins, the protagonist of this book is a Suniti. So one assumes it's probably the same Suniti. And so this Suniti and her grandmother are chatting. And, suddenly this little girl pipes up and says, "Why have I been named Suniti?" And she asks her grandmother, "Did you choose the name?" And the grandmother says, "Well, I did suggest it. And everybody thought it was a very, very sweet sounding name." So like a typical 8 or 9 year old kid, the Suniti is like, sure, it's sweet sounding, but does it even mean something? I mean, all my friends have names that have meanings. And the grandmother's answer is just lovely. She says it means someone who knows how to conduct herself. And this Suniti is so indignant. She's like, does that mean because I've been given this name, I've got to behave myself. Ah, well, a name should never have, have to have you carry that burden, really, right? And her grandmother just smiles, and and Suniti is like, so people, are they named after, like, based on who they are, what their personality traits are, what their character traits are? And the grandmother has a response saying, you know what, it doesn't matter what name you have, you must know that nobody is perfect, nobody really needs to be. And from there on, I mean, of course, she also sort of slips in saying that, that's not just the only somebody who's perfect and somebody who's very well behaved. That's not just Suniti. From legend, there was an unloved queen of a king called Uttanapada, and his son Dhruva. The name of that queen was also, Suniti. And she goes on to narrate these playful, gentle, timeless stories. They just, I think, Suniti, being the fabulist that she is, just weaves in so many layers of myth and fable into these stories. I say, when you're reading this one to kids, there is a young Suniti. So the children are going to identify with the young Suniti in the book. But for you as an adult too, you are going to discover so much in the text. You're going to discover so much, so many life lessons, so many beautiful philosophies which just reveal themselves, just like that. Just a sentence or two or three that make you stop, ponder, and think. Wonderfully, wonderfully complemented by Nilima Sheikh's paintings and illustrations. And it's really, I think, the coming together of two of our finest minds. Really, Suniti Namjoshi and Nilima Sheikh. I mean, I think this book has been in print with Tulika for over 15 years now. It's easily got to be one of those classics of Indian children's literature. If you don't have it, please do pick it up. Read it with the children in your life. Read it yourself. It's a treasure trove of a book in every way. I can see Sunila. Hello, Team Funky Rainbow. So wonderful to see you. I was looking forward to this session so much, and here I am. We're always looking forward to your company in our bazaars. I know you put out a post this morning. My colleague told me that you'd put out a post putting out pictures of so many books that you bought from Funky Rainbow. And when I looked at that picture, I'm like, my God, you have a mini Funky Rainbow in your house. Thank you for that wonderful support, Sunila. And, thank you for letting those books travel from us via you to just so many places. I know, you've sent books off to Madras and to Australia and to different parts of the world. We can't thank you enough for what you do for us. I haven't seen that picture yet, but I'm going to take a look at it once the show's done, and scroll through to see what lovely books have come from our collection to you. Uh, Muttama, of course, as usual, saying, well, I know why you're named Vidya, because you dish out Vidya on books. It's impossible. You could be a Vidya too. You are a Vidya too. Every book that you read, you have a take on it, Muttama. And, that's just the best kind of thing that you can get in the company of books. But really, I can't stop praising Blue and Other Stories more. Just two of the finest minds in Indian literature creating a book for young readers. Okay, I know I'm absolutely and almost out of time because I've been going on and on about my favorite books, but there are two quick ones that I want to just show you. Wonderful anthologies. I mean, it's not like we have books only for young readers, newborns to going up to the age of 18. There's Shobha Tharoor Srinivasan's treasure trove of timeless tales, which takes you zipping all across the world. I mean, it takes you zipping across India as well, and to the Native American communities. There's trickster tales, there's Jataka tales, there's Panchatantra tales, there's mythologies. It's got an unusual collection of stories, not not any not I wouldn't say that, I was familiar with too many of the stories in this collection. So she has really done a lot of research, bringing folk tales from India and from Japan and from China. And there's even a wonderful lesson in economics in one of these folk tales. That's There's The Mouse and the Merchant, which was perhaps the only story that I was familiar with, but I loved her economic interpretation to that story. So we'd say this one 9+ year old, or maybe even 8+ year olds, depending on what level they're reading at. There's Anita Nair, who writes really well, the Puffin Book of World Myths and Legends, a wonderful collection of myths and legends, again from across the world. I mean, it's just this one too has many creation myths. I mean, why was the world created? How was the sun and moon created? How come the sky has different names? When did and how did the clouds get formed? And the various creatures that share this planet with us. This one we definitely say is for 10+ year olds. She really writes with a certain freshness, to make these fables and folk tales and legends come alive. And of course, the concluding book, which is something that everybody who likes stories must read. And I'm sure there are multiple editions of this book available in the Indian children's context, but we have this version. We also have something from CBT, the one that I am showing you now, a treasury of tales from the Katha Sarit Sagara. That is, this is a Heshet book. And the Katha Sarit Sagara, the ocean of stories. I mean, what can we want more than an ocean of stories to just drown ourselves in? And this old classic, which has several variants. I mean, there's the CBT version. I think there's even a picture book, variation that exists. But this one from Heshet, and I think it's done really well, because I know just last week they sent out an announcement for a hardbound version of this book. I mean, usually we do hardbacks and then move to paperbacks, but my assumption is that this one, retold by Jayashree Bhatt, has done very well, for them. And you too can drown yourself in this ocean of stories which take you. There's stories of magic and adventure, there's stories of wit and wisdom, there's stories of folly. I mean, we are constantly making mistakes, so there cannot be, a collection of folk tales that doesn't bemoan the follies and point us to, and that's, I think, a certain charm of folk tales and fables as well. The plot lines are pretty simple. Character traits can be identified very easily. This guy was good, this guy's a trickster, that girl is naughty, this girl is greedy. So character traits that are just very easily identifiable. And hence, I think, a certain popularity to understand human nature, the workings of human nature. There are stories of birds and animals, there are stories of curses and boons, and there are a whole host of stories of humans and animals in this ocean of stories, which is the Katha Sarit Sagara. It is, Muttama was saying that, it's quite popular with school librarians, understandably so. Please consider reading this version of the Katha Sarit Sagara. We'd again say 9, 10+, depending on, the age group. I mean, depending on the levels in which your children are reading. And it's even got a segment that says fantastic fables and where to read them. What are the fantastic fables that exist and where can you read them? Well, you can certainly read them in the Katha Sarit Sagara. This one priced at 299 rupees. Must read for children, adults, all ages. Sunila saying, thank you so much, Vidya. These books are hardly with me now. They are with so many different people in different places, and I love that. It's so sad that people even in India don't know Indian authors. We are going to change that, Sunila. You and all the other writers and, independent bookstores across the country, we are going to definitely change that. We will see the change that we want to see simply by, popularizing Indian children's books. That's what Funky Rainbow does. These are, a clutch of recommendations that we have today. There are a whole lot of other books. I mean, there'd be easily over 100, 150 books of fables, myths, and legends in our collection. You can contact us on 99004 95665. We do have a website, but the website is getting built at the moment, so you can't go online and order the books just right now. It's going to take us, I think, at least 2 weeks to get our website up and running again, because we're rebuilding it and putting in a whole lot of information and material and books that we have at Funky Rainbow. So maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, but do get in touch with us on 99004 95665. If any of these recommendations help you, we're always glad to curate and recommend books for readers of all ages. We're a children's bookshop, but I think we also cater to the child in every adult. With that, I'm going to check. I have, of course, overshot my time, and I'm going to quickly check if our guest for the day is here. Sham says that she is. We're going to connect online first with Rija Radhakrishnan, who joins us all the way from Bombay. Sham, can we get Rija live?
Hi,
Hi, hi. One
good
second,
morning.
Rija. I can't hear you. Hang on 1 second. Yes. Hi, Rija.
Hello, can you hear me?
Uh, Yes, but it's sort of coming in bits and pieces. Maybe, if I have any trouble, I will tell you. But right now, I can absolutely hear you. And I'm also, going to welcome Nitin to join us, who's joining us live at the Bazaar today. Please do join us here, Nitin. We are utterly delighted. I'm going to take off all the books. Please have a seat. Uh,
Hi Vidya. Hi
Hi.
Rija.
Hi.
I think you need to come in a bit closer. I'll move out a bit from this
Okay.
thing, because let our guests see the two of you, chatting. It's such a pleasure to have Nitin at the studio today and Rija joining us from Bombay to talk about their brand new books. I mean, they are fairly new, hardly, I think it's been a month. Sorry. Oh, all right. Sorry. Of course, Sham reminds me that I've forgotten to connect Rija onto Instagram. So before I say anything more, Rija, we're sending you the invitation. Would you like some water?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mitra, will you please give him some water? For our friends on Facebook, Instagram, just bear with us for a bit till we get everything set up. And Rija joins us on Instagram. Here. Yeah. She managed to join live. Okay, so Rija is up on Instagram, and Nitin's joining us live at the studio, and it's such a pleasure to chat with two. With two writers. We've had one book of Rija on our shelves for quite some years now. This is her second book, Tales and Tales, Animal Stories from Indian Mythology, sumptuously and wonderfully illustrated collection of animal stories from ancient folklore and mythology. And of course, because we are Dakshin based, we are in the south of India, we were utterly delighted as well to receive Nitin's book on our shelves, Dakshin, South Indian Myths and Fables Retold. We always we have a gripe in the south that people just forget that this part of the country exists, and when this part of the country gets celebrated in books, we are utterly delighted. Rija, no regional divide at all. We love Mumbai as much as we love Dakshin as well, but we were really happy, Nitin, to see a collection of South Indian folk tales come to us after a long time. I'm going to just quickly introduce the two of them, before we start started chatting, Rija has worked as a journalist with the Indian Express and the Times of India. She has worked, with a New Delhi-based NGO called Jan Manch, for whom she created a Kachua Corner, right, on their website, where there were stories of conservation, of environment, and of wildlife. It's a great abiding interest for Rija. So I'm not surprised that she's done a collection of animal folklore, from Indian mythology. She's, of course, also been a columnist with the Hindu Young World, and her earlier book with Penguin, the one that we've had on our shelves, called The Big Book of Mythology, came out, I think, in 2017 or 2018, isn't it, Rija?
15, 15,
Oh,
15.
2015, is it? Okay, okay. I thought it was a 2017 book. And, like I said in the beginning of our show, the popularity of mythologies and legends and fables means that book has gone from our shelves into many, many school libraries. So, Rija, clearly very, very interested both in ancient folklores and ancient traditions, and, of course, animals, which he has sort of woven into this book. Nitin, on the other hand, I mean, the first thing that I saw in his bio note that he shared with me is that he has designed 22 apps for the iPhone which are in use, like, right? And I'm like, wow, what are those apps, Nitin?
Um, yeah, basically, I'm a software developer. So I've been designing, I've been programming, developing apps since 29. So yeah,
Okay.
so I mean 2009.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah. So over a period of time, I've been making apps for various companies.
Right.
So yeah.
And 22 of those apps are now still, are being used on the iPhone,
They
essentially, isn't it?
were
Like,
released on the App Store, but you have to keep maintaining them. So some of
ah,
them are no longer there.
I
But yeah,
see.
they've all been out there on the market.
Okay, super. But I mean, the multi-dimensional nature of people who are writing for children. I mean, there are those 22 apps. The other wonderful thing about Nitin is that he's working on a project to set up a digital museum to Kodava culture. The Kodavas, from Coorg in Karnataka. Nitin is part of a team that has been supported by India Foundation for the Arts, and this digital museum that is archiving Kodava culture, by way of stories, by way of recipes, by way of clothes that they wear, is soon going, probably going to go live in another month
Yeah,
or so,
it,
you were saying,
we hope
essentially.
to, yeah, we hope to see it next month. I mean, it'll be out next month.
Yeah, so I find that whole idea of a digital museum, making it a most democratic space that anyone and everybody can access, most exciting. And I don't need to tell you then that Dakshin is very, very partial to the Kodavas, definitely. And Nitin Kodava himself, of course, he's written other books as well. I mean, in fact, this is his eighth book, I think, or is it,
Yeah,
is it your
it's my
eighth?
eighth one.
It's your eighth book. The other ones, that are they all for children?
No, I
No.
mean they're in fact, four of them are on a local history of Coog, in fact, Kodagu, and
Surprise,
the,
surprise.
there's one which is a translation from Kannada into English.
Right,
It's a biography of a Gandhian,
right.
and then there's another biography of a war hero, a decorated war hero, army
Okay,
hero.
okay.
Then there's a book of fiction.
Uh-huh.
That's like you can say it's like it's based on the Ramayana. You can call it the modern age Ramayana.
Okay.
And yeah, this is the eighth one.
This is, of course, the first one for children, really. Very, very beautifully
Yeah.
produced. And Muttama, I was telling you, our co-founder at Funky Rainbow is also from Kurg, and she says that's amazing, else we will lose all that wealth. So it's a job wonderfully done. And I have to say that one of the stories from Kurg, the Badaga story that you have in the collection as well, were stories that just appealed. So, I mean, they were unusual stories that we had not read anywhere at all. But let's get started. Let's start chat with them to find out, what goes into making the book. So I'm going to ask this question, which is open to both of you. Rija, maybe you may want to take that one first, about folk tales and fables. I mean, they are believed to be messages from the past to the future. They help readers understand the world, they help readers understand human nature. Do you agree? And, could you sort of tell us how in the context of your books?
Yeah, most fables, especially fables, are mostly animal stories. With most of them are protagonists are animals, and most of them are to do with stories, moral lessons. And in my book, at least, we are dealing in the Indian context here. You have the Panchatantra stories from the Panchatantra, from the Jatakas, from
Correct.
Hitopadesha, Katha Sarit Sakara. All these are stories, animal stories, which are fables which give you moral lessons. And if you look at Panchatantra, for example, the origins of Panchatantra, we do not know exactly when it was dated, but what traditionally you are told that Pandit Vishnu Sharma told these
Right.
stories to, some three princes of King Amra Shakti, and they were princes who were, not too bright. And so the king
Yeah.
said, please teach my children so that they are going to take over tomorrow, and they need good lessons in governance and administration and politics. But it is too much for these children who were, their attention span is limited, like all children mostly. And so when Vishnu Sharma actually went to teach them, he found that they were not listening to him. They did not no So then he decided, okay, I will do a different thing. I will teach them through stories.
Lovely.
And so then he started telling them stories, and these stories, all of them come, it's a very simple story, and each of the stories will have a theme. And you have animal characters who are, actually going through situations where you have to deal with, all kinds of conflicts, and how you come out of it, how you use your wit, your courage, and all kinds of values that you need to get out of such situations. So
Right.
slowly he taught them like that, and in 6 months he was supposed to have taught these children how to
Into
be good administrators, leaders, and good human beings. So
right.
most of our fables and even all these stories have gone across the world, from India, of course, and it has traveled the world, and it has been in various forms in various countries. Our Panchatantras have gone as far as Iceland, for
That's
example.
right.
Yes, you have Turkish versions, you have Arabic versions, you have all kinds of Thailand versions, and so they have spread over because it's oral tradition, and it has gone across, and they're all, when you actually look at it, a lot of similarities in the stories, because the main stories remain the same, the core stories remain the same, and these are stories like that.
That's right. What about you, Nitin? Do you agree that these tales, sort of really are messages from the past to the future?
Yeah, basically like fables. It was set in the past, so there will be a context, a historical context to it. But when you look at it, it's it's basically like animals. Animals, these animals will have human-like nature. They'll speak like humans. They behave like humans, and then it's over time, like if it was in the past or in the future, human behavior tends to be the same. So it's like you have
Right.
the same emotions, you have the same feelings, you have the same reactions, although the settings might be different, the circumstances might be different,
Right.
but it's all the same that happens. So in the past, it's like there would be a different situation, or like the times would have been different, the circumstances would have been different, and it's you have it set over there, the fable is set over there, but obviously, like if you just remove you have the
The
story, the basic,
context.
yeah,
Hmm.
you remove the historical background, you can simply set it in the future as well. So I mean, it's the same, it's the same emotions, it's the same reactions,
It's
it's the
the
same
same.
behavior. And it's like in fables you have the animals, it's like they have this they are more human. It's just that they are in uh, they are called animals.
That's
Otherwise
right. They've
it's like
been.
you may you in the fables they are made to speak, they're made to
That's right.
behave, and so it's like it's these are these moral lessons, you can say, something that was taught to the children. So then kids, they are fascinated by animals. So then it's like when you have humans, they tend to like animals more than humans. So it's like they like it when animals speak and behave like humans, and then they get to learn a lot from this. Like they get to learn about behavior as such. So it's they get to learn about what they are, in fact they are being you can say taught through these fables about what is right and wrong.
Ah.
So those morals and all those. That's an interesting way to teach these kids. So there's like Rija has spoken about the Panchatantra. So the Panchatantra, it's very well known. It's like people all over the world, they know the Panchatantra, and there are many like Panchatantra has traveled in the ancient times also. It's gone across, and
To different parts of the world.
different
Yeah.
parts of the world.
Yeah.
It was there in different versions in the Middle East, in Europe, and likewise there's fables from Europe that's come to India, and so it's like a give and take relationship. It's like you take from the world and you give to the world.
Yeah.
And these I mean back then in the past, storytelling was a big thing. So right now you have the visual media, you have videos, you have movies. So all this takes up the creative space. But in the past there was there's this these stories, oral stories, in fact, before they were put into writing. So these were a big thing then. So it's like this is how knowledge was transmitted from one generation to another, you could say. Like it was right now it's we live in a we live in rapid times. So it's like the pace, it's too much compared to back then. It was like it was all slow paced back then. So you had stories, a story is told by an older person to children, and then this gets transmitted. The children tell it to their children. This gets
That's right.
passed
As an
down through,
oral
yeah,
tradition,
passed down through
absolutely. Yeah.
generations. And then at one point of time, finally, when writing becomes more popular and among the people or the region or something like that, so they tend to put this oral story into writing, and then it gets carried forward in writing form. And in the present age, you have stories which are told through movies, and
Blogs
yeah,
and
blogs, and
yeah.
it gets carried forward.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's right. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm in a very slow paced mode. Like I
I
prefer
mean,
to
it's
listen to. I like watch.
it's good to be it's good to be slow paced.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I mean, in a fast-paced world, I mean,
yeah.
we know that eventually we're going to get left
There's
out, but there's just some
yeah, but
beauty, in hearing. A.K. Ramanujan, in his
yes.
collection of folk tales, said, "In India, a story is just a grandparent away." I'm sure all of us remember, listening to stories from our parents, grandparents, from other older siblings, essentially, right?
So, I mean, basically, the idea of writing this book was I wanted to put it into writing, and also like some of these stories have been in writing before. So it's like if, despite they being in writing, it's not like they were made for children, or like the context was not so well understood. So I wanted to try to elaborate it, so make it like children should be able to understand it. What were the times,
Hmm.
and maybe what caused people to or animals to behave as they did in
Uh-huh.
these stories.
Uh-huh.
So
So
yeah.
that's how you decided to kind of write this
Yeah.
collection, right? So of course, both of you have said this, that they are mostly folk tales, fables. They're all oral traditions, and they've been passed on from person to person by way of listening. So what did the job of writing them actually entail? I mean, if you could tell our readers what the writing of the folk tales actually entailed. I mean, something that's such a rich oral story, what did it take to sort of write it? Rija, you can respond.
Yeah, because these stories are passed on over centuries, over ages, and it would have lost a lot of it would have been lost in translation. A lot of
Absolutely.
nuances come in, different interpretations come in, and each one adds to the story. Every time it's like the Chinese whispers, the party game, where
That's
you
right.
start whispering and then it goes on and goes on and goes on, and somewhere else it changes slightly or entirely. So the stories change slightly, but essence remains the same, and everybody gives their own interpretation. So all of us, I think, in modern context, how we write it. I mean, I have written it for today's children,
Correct.
so it is a language that they understand and they speak.
Hmm.
So maybe 20 years ago, it would have been a different language. So when children speak and what is the parlance now, you use that for that context. So, from now in the another future, but these stories are timeless and they will stay forever with us because they're classics and the essence
Correct.
remains the same. It's not a story which, is going to go away. It's not a timely story. It is not a contemporary story. So these are stories which will stay with us, even much after all of us, and, you
And
know,
that's right.
so therefore everybody gives their own color to it, and it is now it is me, tomorrow it's somebody else, and it will go on like that as long as a story gets passed on, and it's a tradition. And we are also doing it's in an oral, but here we are writing it because now people can write, people can read, and here you can have grandparents or parents or teachers read to the children, because young children don't want to read, so
Yeah,
somebody needs to read it to them, right?
yeah,
So it will still be an oral tradition when you read these books to children.
right.
So
What about you, Nitin? What do you feel? What did it take to write these stories?
So I
Actually,
mean,
yeah.
like from what I see, I feel that oral storytelling it's going down. Like I don't find many, for obvious reasons, there are not many oral storytellers today.
Hmm.
So like back then, like when I was a kid, my grandparents used to tell me stories, and then today's kids, they are like they watch YouTube and then they watch all these various Masha and the Bear and other stories. So they're fond of the visual media. So when it comes to that, it's like there are many stories that are they go away. So like Indian stories, for example, they go away. If suppose the Panchatantra was never written, I'm sure the stories in the Panchatantra would never have come down to us. Similarly, there's the Patol Palame.
Yeah, you've
Yeah,
referred to it in your
I have
book.
referred
Yeah.
to it. This
Hmm.
this was written in the Kannada script in 1924. So, because it was recorded, then we have some of these stories like
Recorded in writing.
in writing.
Hmm.
So, this was in writing. This is like one of the first in India where oral traditions were recorded in writing. So,
I see.
this was translated in 2003, 2004 into English. It's some of the stories in this Patol Palame. Like I've never come across it elsewhere.
Right.
There are some stories which are still told today, but a few of them, at least a few of them, are like it no longer exists. I know that it's there because I read this book.
Hmm.
Probably it was popular in 1924, but it's no longer being told.
Did you read
So
it in Kannada or in?
I have both versions. I've read both. Like
Oh, nice.
it was the English version I read first.
Okay.
It's only then that I became aware of this book called
This.
Patal Palame.
Right.
It's actually, I should say that because of the English translation, the book became more well known among the Kodawas itself. Many of the Kodawas didn't
Know of this
know of
collection
this
at all.
collection at all. So, I got the English translation, and then I got the original one. Like this re-edition, newer edition. But I got both copies of it. I've read both of it. So it's these basically it's because of this writing we have these stories. Otherwise, it will go away. So
Is
it has to be put into writing
we have
sometime.
many storytellers watching you. They're going to disagree absolutely. Like, right, that.
I yeah there I appreciate oral storytellers. Like I should say that may that tribe increase. They should
Absolutely.
always yeah. I mean there are many versions of it. There's one more problem which came up with Patol Palme, which I noticed.
Uh-huh.
There's this when you put something to writing, it becomes the written part, the written version of it becomes the standard version.
Right.
So then like there are some songs I like when I go to different villages in
In
Kodagu.
Cook. Hmm.
So then there's the same song that's sung in different versions.
Hmm.
But right now, what happens is these the newer generation they learn these songs from the Patol Palame. So
The English version of the Patol Pal.
the Kannada version,
I see.
which was in
Hmm.
Kannada, the
Hmm.
1924
Hmm.
one,
Hmm. Hmm.
they sing it in that. So it's like the older generation, the people who never actually read the Patol Palame, who learned it from their fathers and grandfathers, they have a different version which is dying out. And the same
Oh.
the written version becomes standard, and people learn that and they keep promoting it. So there's always an advantage and a disadvantage of having it in the oral form and the written form.
That is right. That is right. I mean, and it's good to have, written archives of many of these things. But
Yeah,
Rija used the right word, Chinese whispers. So many things get added.
yeah.
It's like passing on one message from one person to the other. By the time it reaches the last person, it's some other message altogether, really, right? But Rija, I wanted to ask you, the environment and wildlife are obviously great areas of interest for you. I mean, from, what you were chatting yesterday of, setting up the Katua corner, and even doing work with a lot of NGOs around the environment conservation. So is this why you chose to tell animal folk tales from ancient folklore and mythology?
yes, in a way, I've been planning this book for a long time, and because I thought I would compile a list of stories of animals which give out lessons, and also from all our mythologies. And you have animals; it's a fascinating world. the
Mm-hmm.
animal world, and I think children love to listen to stories about animals, right? And so this is a list of stories which are from the Hindu mythology, from the Puranas, from the Jatakas, from the Jain mythology, everything only involving purely animals.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to do something like that, because of course I do love my interest is in environment, wildlife, also mythology, because I've been
Okay.
working in both these fields for the longest time, and I
Right.
thought this would be a amalgamation of the two.
Right. Right. I can see Muttama has commented on your response, saying that that's a very special perspective. And she says Rupa Publications has published the Patol Palame, and I got an understanding of my own roots because of that book,
Yeah,
essentially.
the
So
English translation,
the English
the
translation.
2003 one that I was
That's
speaking of.
right. That's
Okay.
right, which has been published by Rupa. But I wanted to ask you, Nitin. In fact, even from your book, what I kind of got was, I mean, I've lived in Tamil Nadu for a long time, and so the Badaga culture. I had a friend who was researching the Nilgiri Tar, and have traveled a couple of times with her into those things. So the Badaga community itself, I was very intrigued to see that there was a story from the Badaga tradition. There was the Kodava tradition as well, and then you had one more language, right, Mundri, which is um,
Actually from
which is
Orissa.
a bit of a fake
No, it's not
Dakshin. I
fake.
mean, not.
It's the only exception in this
Yeah,
case.
that's right. I should have
But
not said fake,
it's
but it's the
exception. Yeah.
border of Telangana, Andhra
No,
Pradesh, and
I
Orissa,
like
essentially, isn't it? Like, right?
I didn't want to be very strict about this geographical divisions and all that. Like I thought that's a story that shouldn't be missed out. I love that story, the
That's right.
Mundari story from Orissa.
That's right.
So the intention of putting it into this book was, since this is for children, I thought that's a children's tale. Although it's not from South India, it should be there in this collection. So it's like everything. All the other 14 stories are from South India. There's one story from Orissa,
Five from Karnataka, I think,
five
right?
from
So he's
Karnataka,
really partial to our
two
state.
from. No, I mean it's because the partiality has to do with
Your
my
research.
familiarity.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I cannot speak of something I'm not very familiar with. So
That's right. No, but I wanted to know, some of these languages are endangered. In fact, even Kodagu is also an endangered language in some ways. So how did you find them? How did you find these stories? I mean, I know you told us the story of, the Patol Palame,
okay.
and how else? I mean, how did you go about finding these stories from languages that are not spoken that much anymore, or so did you hear these stories, did you read them in some books? If you could just tell us in the context of one or two stories in the book.
Okay, so there's, for example, the Badaga story. I
Hmm.
have Badaga friends, so I got them to,
Okay.
while I converse with them, I got to learn of some of these stories. And actually, I have collected three stories, and only one of them has made it into this book. The
Hmm. The
three
Badaga
Badaga
tales.
stories, yeah.
Okay, okay. Hmm.
So then, like, what fascinated me about them is they have these elaborate death rituals, ceremonies, and
Hmm.
it's like they are very I found them to be a very philosophical people. So it's like
Okay.
they afterlife is a big thing for them.
Hmm.
So like during my interactions with the Badaga people, and also like I got to read some of their stories as well in the written form.
Hmm.
So that way I came to be familiar with their folklore.
Hmm.
Then again, I've included Telugu. There's one Telugu folktale. There's a Malayalam folktale. There's a
That's
Tamil
right.
folktale. There's one from the Coimbatore region, the Kongunad
Correct.
region.
Yeah. Kongunad
So
story. Yeah. Hmm.
these like the other languages like Kannada, Telugu, Malayalam, and Tamil are very well known, and they are part of South India. So I try to like at least the what I felt was the most well-known stories in these
Regions.
languages and
Hmm.
regions. I thought that at least those should come in the book.
Hmm.
I mean, like the idea we had was like there should be 15 stories, and there was a limitation. Like we should,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't want to have a very big book. So like I've tried to put in the best from each region, and that was one criteria. The other criteria was if I found that there's a story like there's the story of the Mysore that's from
Correct.
Kerala and Karnataka, and this one I've never found any written version anywhere.
So did
So
you hear it from
I
somebody?
heard it. I
Hmm.
heard it. So I thought this should be documented. Otherwise, it'll be gone. Like nobody else might document it. So the story of the mice, I've put it into this book. And then there's the story of there's a story of a kangaroo in this.
Yes, that's correct. Which quite unusual animal to
Yeah,
make an
it's
appearance
it's
in.
it's 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 actually something that my grandfather told me, grandfather, uncles, and this was actually a bedtime story. This one, and there's the cat and the fly. That's a Malayalam story. Then
That's
there's
right.
Bala Nagama, which is a Telugu story which has been made into movies and comic books,
That's right. In fact, you
etc.
said you researched, found some of these folk tales from researching comic books and movies as well. Like, right. So, what is that Balanagama? How did you get? You got that from a movie, is it?
No, like actually I remember seeing one old Kannada movie,
Okay.
Bala Nagama. It's a Rajkumar movie.
Okay.
So when I saw this, I never realized I'll be writing this story at that point of time. What
Okay.
happened was, like, when I was researching for this book, I got in touch with some professors I know. So there were some from the Hampi University, some from the University of Hyderabad, and these professors, they have roots in Andhra, Telangana, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, from different places.
Mm-hmm.
So then I worked on their suggestions. Like I discussed with them. Like I wanted to know what would they recommend. Like what would they suggest needs to come into this collection. So
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
I got this recommendation that the Bala Nagama story, it's a definite must.
Okay.
So I saw the Kannada version. Then I thought it's not enough. I need to watch the Telugu version also. And then
Okay.
I had read this Amar Chitrakatha book as well when I was a kid.
Okay.
So then these were all different versions. I came up with one version of the story and I put it into the book, the Balanagama story.
Okay. So research that has taken you far and wide, of course.
Yeah.
Muttama, you were of course saying Kodava Tak is or Kodava Tak is the language of the Kodavas. I've heard you, speak it with Devika Karyappa. Both of you have very different ways of sort of speaking the language. But I'm just going to keep watch over the time. We might take another 10 minutes to, sort of ask a couple of more questions essentially. In both, in your book, Rija, you've got, stories from the Hindu tradition, from the Buddhist tradition, from the Jain tradition. Is there a difference in the ways? I mean, you've got stories of friends and foes, you've got stories of wit and wisdom, you've got stories of folly as well, like, right? Is there a difference in the way in which the animals are portrayed across these traditions?
Yes, yes, definitely. Now, if you look at the Hindu tradition, the Hindu mythology, it's a vast canvas. You
Mm-hmm.
have gods, animals take god forms, demons
That's
take
right.
god forms, demigods take god forms. So then you have vahanas, which are again divine beings who become vahanas, as in transports for the gods. Then
Mm-hmm.
you have so there is a you can be a good person or an evil person as an animal. So that is how it goes, and it's a huge canvas. So you can play around with the animals in different ways. So there are gods, you worship gods who are animals, like Ganesha we have,
That's
and
right.
Narasimha. So all
Yeah,
these are gods. At the
that's
same time, you have asuras who are
correct.
also, your Marich. And and same way. So Hanuman, he's a friend of a god. He's an aid of a god. So
Mm-hmm.
animals come in all colors in the Hindu mythology.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike that, when you go to Buddhist mythology, rather the Jatakas, which are actually stories mostly recounted by Buddha, it's all
Buddha, yeah.
Buddha. And Buddha, as according to the Buddhist belief, Buddha was the Bodhisattva. He evolved over a cycle of rebirths, and he was born again and again and again as an animal, as a human, until
Mm-hmm.
he became a refined being that he is, as
Mm-hmm.
Gautama Siddhartha. So,
Mm.
in the earlier life, the stories which speak of the earlier life of Buddha, and some of the stories which he himself has related to his disciples, they have a leader, which is Buddha himself. It may be an animal king, or a leader of a pack of animals like Rohanta the golden deer in my book.
Ramanta, yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and these stories mostly reflect courage, sacrifice, compassion, just like what Buddha was. So you
Mhm.
evolve. So Buddhists believe that you evolve, and as you evolve and higher, and then you become, the divine being that you are.
Okay.
When it comes to Jains also believe that every plant, every person, everything has a soul, an animal, a human. And it is only through a process of a cycle of rebirths that you become the refined.
Correct. Yeah. Mm.
So, like attaining nirvana. So, mostly the animals in the Jain mythology have pretty sad lives. They suffer a
Mhm.
lot, they go through a lot of sacrifices, and they're starting at the bottom of the ladder.
Mhm.
So, then they go through great suffering, and when they exhibit courage and able to get over the situations, and that is how they go to the higher. You can even become a divine being straight from an animal in that case. So,
Mhm.
and sometimes if you, because of your bad, if you're a human being and you behave, in a way that is not, you know uh, more moral,
Appropriate. Yeah.
and then so you fall back to an
Yeah.
animal form. So it is like snakes and ladders. So you go right down and then you come up. So then,
Yeah.
as you know, and you evolve, then you finally become one with the divine being. That's how Jains believe. So in the Jain mythology, it's a little more tougher than the others.
I can
That's
imagine.
what I found. It is, and there were a lot of sad stories which I didn't want to put in for children because you don't need sad endings and that
Yeah,
is.
you want, you made that point really well. We used to play a game with my grandparents, which was the form of, which is a like a native form of the snakes and ladders game, right? And the snakes were all mostly vices, or you'll climb ladders, but the snakes are all vices. And my grandmother would repeatedly say this to us, that you can go past the thing very quickly, but you will fall to that vice. They used to play it on Shivratri night, and to be awake, they'll say that you will never reach 100 because you will fall prey to that vice which you are. And she'll say that the children, they will win that game more easily because children are more, you I mean, it was just lovely the way each of those snakes were named after. I mean, they were like basically reflections of human avarice, greed, lying, selfishness, and Paramapadam, it used to be called, that board that we would play with my grandmother sometimes on Shivratri night. But yeah, it sort of brought back that memory. For you, in fact, Nikhil, Nitin, one of the things that I felt, and in fact, you brought it out when you were talking about that Badaga story as well. I mean, your folk tales and fables have some distinctly identifiable human traits which are common. I mean, like, lying and being miserly and being honest and whatever. But there's also some deep philosophical undertones in a couple of the stories, definitely, like, right? And I wanted to, and which and even just this morning, one librarian friend who said she's not able to join but wanted to join because she had gifted this book to a friend in Singapore who is a Kodava. And she said she that lady may have been, I think, well in her 50s or 60s, saying that she enjoyed that collection very much. So I feel it's these sort of undertones that you have added into some of the stories that make it suitable at once for children as well for adults. Did you have to work particularly hard to
I mean,
get those in, or was it just part of writing the story? That's it, like, right?
uh, honestly, it was part of the writing. It's like
Okay.
these are all retelling. So when I come across a story, I mean, like when I wanted to write it, I was going through various stories. I was like doing some brainstorming. I wanted to bring 15 stories into the collection.
Right.
At that point of time, like I had to put in my own identity there. Like it's after all, some of these stories have been told in the past.
That's right.
So if I felt something was not complete in my sense, so it's like if I felt if I think it's not complete, I wanted to make it complete in a way that it's like people can understand it.
Not complete in the sense, if you've.
uh, if uh, if a character behaves in a particular way, and there's no reason for that character to behave in that way,
Mhm.
I felt I need to put in more of that. I need
Okay.
to make the audience understand why the character wants to behave in that way, or why something is done, or something like that.
That's
So
right.
then I bring in my own understanding there, and then that gets termed as philosophy.
Perhaps, I mean, for us as readers, and there is something timeless about, folk tales. Each one of these books that I was recommending earlier, I think children can read it, adults can read it, adults can tell it to, narrate it to their children, siblings can narrate to younger siblings. So there is a certain timelessness about, folk tales and fables and myths and legends. And I actually started the show by saying that when people come to Funky Rainbow to choose and buy books, we usually veer them towards contemporary fiction. We'll give them more modern and contemporary writing, but somehow everybody will add one or two collections of folk tales, or because there's a certain familiarity that I think people just love, and they're hoping also to discover some unusual tales, which certainly from your book, and Rija's book, there are some wonderful unusual stories that we have not read that have added into this collection. I think we're just almost out of time. So very quickly, I'm going to say, most people watching are, like I said, parents, teachers, and librarians. Would you like to, quickly tell them how folk tales and fables can really foster a love of reading in children? And I think, it goes a long way in helping children discover sometimes reading, and also, enjoy it. So would both of you like to quickly respond to that question? Rija, you go first.
Definitely, because these are stories with timeless appeal. It has been, passed on for generations, and they will definitely find resonance with today's children and the future children. And not only just for them to read it themselves, it would be ideal for teachers and parents and grandparents to read it to them. So you also form that bond with the child, and so the child feels that you are reading to them, and that helps develop that bond between you and the child. And
That's
so
right.
reading to the children is also a very important thing. You don't ask them to read, you start reading to them when they are really small. And
Uh-huh.
I remember in my own personal life, when we were in school, we had a history lesson on Russian Revolution, and our history teacher took an entire class to tell us a story of Rasputin in grade 8. And
Yeah,
today I remember that. So,
right,
so it is no age is too old or young for parents and teachers and librarians and storytellers to tell stories to children. And so that stays with you forever, because the visual element, when you interpret a story and tell a story to a child, it stays with you forever. So
right.
I think it's very important that the teachers and parents not just expect the children to read, but read it to them, read with them, most
Correct,
importantly.
correct.
Because that
Wonderful.
makes the child think that, I am not doing a chore, they are doing this with me, it's something we're doing together.
Right.
So it also creates that kind of a bond. So
That's right.
that I feel is more important, especially with these kind of stories, because these are for young readers, and you
Right.
don't expect them to read something like this, alone.
Right.
It's entirely different when you have contemporary stories which they can relate to.
That's
That's
right.
something in their milieu, and but these are traditional stories, so they would need somebody to interpret it for them and introduce them to it. So the younger, the better.
Lovely. What about you, Nitin? Any particular, advice for parents or teachers on, how folk tales help, foster a love for reading in children?
Yeah, so I would always recommend reading to kids. So parents should limit screen time. So it's like,
Thus says the man who's developed 22 apps. Okay, so you heard it from there as well. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's
I
like,
wear multiple hats, so I have to do these things. But yeah,
no, no,
sorry,
no.
go
It's
ahead.
it's
Yeah.
like I'm at a point where I've been too much into technology, and then like it's like I see uh, I realize there should be a balance of it. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So well said, that is
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
I would always say that parents need to limit screen time, and yeah, like because you said this, you'll always find software engineers. They always It's like they always are concerned about the screen time of their kids. It's like they know that they should draw lines of it. So it's
Okay.
the founder of TikTok was saying this on online
That he
on
limits his
yeah.
child screen time, is
I
it?
mean,
Gosh.
I mean, he was saying that TikTok in the US it's different from TikTok elsewhere.
I
So
see. Huh.
in Asia, it's like TikTok to use TikTok, a person has to be about 12 or 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
But in the US, it's like there's a different TikTok version for those below 12 and 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, this is the founder of TikTok himself saying. He
Ah.
was saying that okay, those below, he doesn't recommend kids below 12 or 13 years using TikTok.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying is, parents should read stories to their kids, and they should. I mean, kids should learn to read on their own. It's with this, we find kids, they're being they watch YouTube, they watch the television while they're eating, and it's like that's how they are kept occupied.
Mhm.
But with this visual media, I don't find like when you read in print, you tend to visualize a lot. You tend to
Absolutely.
imagine things.
Absolutely.
You you I mean, you have that thinking process going on. But
Absolutely.
when everything is bombarded to you on the screen, it's like you don't have to think much. You don't have to visualize. You don't have to imagine like how something is, how a story happens or anything. It's like it's all being spoon fed to you. So it's like I feel kids will lose out on that thinking skills. So they have
Absolutely.
to. There should be a balance somewhere. I know moving forward, this the media, it will grow,
It's
expand,
going
and
to
yeah.
expand. Yes, yes.
So print media has a place. It needs to have a place, and parents and children should ensure this happens. Children should read more. Parents should tell more bedtime stories to their kids, and yeah, life
Yeah.
must go on.
Life must go on. Yes, that's a great way to close a bazaar on folk tales. But two wonderful collections of folk tales. I'm entirely in favor of. Switching off the television and opening a book. It sort of funds our imagination the way other things can't. I mean, of course, children have different ways of learning things. We know many kids who are very visual learners as well, and pick up many things from YouTube, and and they're not only watching things, but still the certain quietude that you need to read, the ability to interpret things, I think opens up very very well from books. So for all of you watching, I can see Jyoti Narayan, who's a storyteller. She says such a valuable input to read to children even when they can read by themselves. And when you listen to a story as a child, it stays with you forever. It's the same even with adults. When you listen to a remarkable story, it just stays with you. This happened very recently. The a wonderful library in Bangalore, Hippocampus, turned 20, and there was the storyteller Jeeva Raghunath who had come to tell a story. She has such a humorous way of narrating stories that I remember after the event, and I was driving back home at least for 20 minutes laughing in the car, just to myself. I'm sure my drivers were wondering who's this mad woman driving on the road laughing to herself, kind of thing. But that recall of that story is so vivid in our heads. So I couldn't agree more with you. For all of you watching, there's Tales and Tales, Animal Stories from Indian Mythology by retold by Rija Radhakrishnan. It's a beautifully illustrated and wonderfully produced book. It's been illustrated by Megha Punetar, and I think she's done an excellent job of recreating creating visuals for the book. And Dakshin, for lots of you watching from South India, I'm assuming, but I know Jyoti, you're based in Bombay. It's a great collection of stories from the south of India, with one that has sneaked in, which is not from South India, but you will learn something about a new language there, wonderfully produced as well. I love the way they've designed black and white. We don't see that many combinations of black and white in Indian children's books, so this one has been done very nicely as well. Two lovely collections for your bookshelves, people. Read it with your children, and let's the bonds that get created over these are just the best ones that have to be celebrated forever. So thank you, Rija, and thank you, Nitin. Of course, Jyoti is clarifying they're South Indian based in Mumbai, so best of both worlds. Well, South Indian based in Mumbai, best of both worlds for us is in Bangalore
I
at the
mean,
moment.
I would like to add one thing. This is tales from South India, but this is meant for everybody. It's not like it's just that the tales are from South India, but yeah.
all over the country. Please read it, But it was lovely to have the two of you join us. I mean, two wonderful new books, very, very contemporary and current books. So we're very happy to have chatted with the two of you. Thank you so much. And I hope
Thank you, Vidya.
your folk tales and tales will go into more books.
Thank you.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm going to quickly just say bye. Sunila is, of course, saying, great. I'm a Mumbai girl based in Bangalore. We just love it. Please, please tell us, and we'll recommend books for Mumbai girls in Bangalore and for Bangalore girls in Mumbai. We have enough books in our collection to recommend to all of you all. But really, the best way to travel actually across the country, across the world is within the pages of a book. I'm sure I easily betray my age saying this, but really nothing quite like the pleasure that you get from the pages of a book. I'm quickly just going to say thank you to everybody who's joined us at the show today. Ritvika Roy, Jyoti Narayan, Sunila Gupta, Mutama, thank you so much for joining us. And I know my colleague Bharti has sent me many names. Darshini, String a Story, Ishu Agarwal, Daffodil Lane Books, what a pleasure. K Cool, Sanya, Euro Kids, Srishti, Tanmay, Manasa, Books Network India. Wow, that's nice. Foodie over Moody. That is also a very nice name. I don't know who's moody about what, like, right? Sketch Notes, Charles Emmanuel, and Reading Stars India. What a pleasure that all of you have joined us on the show today. We'll see you next week with another bazaar. Thank you so much for joining us today. Sunila says, thank you. I loved listening to Rija and Nitin. Thank you, Rija and Nitin. We will be
Thank you,
in
Vidya and Nitin
with
and
you.
everybody for tuning in. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all of you, and thank you, Vidya. Thank you, Rija.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Can I switch off this one? Yeah.